So I can't tell you if it was my 13th, or my 14th birthday, they bought me a little Canon 700D. My mother had something called Graves' disease. One day you'll be unlucky because the taxman will knock on your door and come claim 45% of everything you've made. Hi, I'm Gabriel McCready. I am the founding director of Cine1, and by the time this video released, the co-founding director of Resource. To really give the whole story of Cine1, it wasn't particularly one or two things that happened in my life. I didn't wake up one day and say, okay, I'm out of school, I need to earn money, I need to open up a company, and Cine1 came from it. It was really very much a process of virtually different things happening throughout my life to get me from point A to point B. I think to give you context, 1 out of 5 siblings in my family, everybody's older than me, with my closest sibling being 9 years older than me. I have a sister in her mid-50s, I'm 26, and my father had me at 52 years old. I always make a joke about my dad saying that he's not dissimilar to Morgan Freeman, though. He's been old my whole life. There was no moments of kicking balls. He was a great inspiration in many other ways, being one of my bigger inspirations throughout my life, undoubtedly. I'm actually very proud of him today. He's 76 years old, and he's one of the sharpest, most charismatic, most healthy and active 78-year-olds that I've ever come across. Well, I must give my mum some love as well. She's in her mid-60s, like highly creative woman, highly independent and strong, feisty Italian woman, which has been a great source of creativity for myself, and we'll talk about my brothers as well throughout of our lives, kind of where we got our creativity from. To start like very far back in the beginning, I had like a crazy difficult birth. My mother had something called Graves' disease. So, Lucy's pulling his eye there. Graves' disease it's kind of what it sounds like in the name. I mean, one of the most terrifying things you can have on the planet. Something that has the word grave and disease in it all in one. But to summarize it very easily is, we've all heard of an underactive thyroid, which makes an individual like very chunky, overweight, it's hard to lose weight. Not deadly to an individual. They just live their life somewhat overweight. Then you get an overactive thyroid, which is the exact opposite. It's an overactive thyroid. It makes the individual very anorexic and very hard to pick up weight, which becomes deadly and turns into something called Graves' disease. So what's interesting about Graves' disease, and I don't know if it's still modern medicine or if they're doing it differently, but how they treat Graves' disease is the person gets admitted into hospital and they swallow a tablet that has a bunch of active radiation in it, which is quite a crazy thing. So this is a procedure my mother had gone through. When they found out that, well, she always knew she had Graves' disease, but eventually came to a point where this is going to kill you. You need to now take this tablet to sort out your thyroid. You swallow this tablet, it gets delivered in like a crazy container. You swallow the tablet and your thyroid digests that tablet, and the radiation essentially destroys your thyroid. It brings it either to a normal working place or an underactive thyroid. It's a lot of radiation. It's what was described to me. I was not there. Was my mother had taken the tablets, and then for a good 5 days afterwards, your family can only visit you through like a glass window. You're in a quarantine room. Doctors are in hazmat suits. This is obviously what's described to me. So she does it. It's a success. It breaks down her thyroid. She can move on with her life. She had like sickness afterwards, radiation sickness, which is normal. Then she gets discharged out of hospital and she starts feeling ill again. Maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, she starts feeling nauseous and ill again. So she goes back to the doctors. They had run a bunch of tests leading up to that, but not a pregnancy test. And she was pregnant with me. At the time, just taking all this radiation. So it was a big thing. The doctor said, look, we made a huge mistake here. We didn't test for pregnancy. You are pregnant. And they said to her in a very blunt way, look, your husband is 52 years old. You're about to turn 40. Your child is going to like develop with nothing. So we'll be lucky if he's born Down syndrome. And the words that they said to me was, we'll be lucky if he's developed all 4 limbs by the time you have to give birth to him. So their big recommendation was, you guys are older. There's going to be a troublesome baby. You must have an abortion. God bless my mother, a God-fearing woman. She said, no, we're not having an abortion. We'll love him regardless of how he comes out. And they went through with the pregnancy. And only up until the day I was born did they realize that he wouldn't be Down syndrome, and they obviously saw through the scans that I was developing limbs. So I mean, this is the first thing in my life where I got fucking incredibly lucky. The fact that I shouldn't even be sitting in the seat right now. I could have either been an abortion or I could have been severely disabled. So super lucky to have that. I wasn't born without any problems. I got problems, but in the grand scheme of the problems that I could have had, I got incredibly lucky, and it's easy to live with the things that I've got. So yeah, to fast forward a bit, I'm obviously born. My family, I've got this big Italian family, full of creatives, full of entrepreneurs. To introduce you to my second eldest brother, Nick. Nick's a musician. He owns a Fundamental Entertainment and events company. Very much growing up, because all my siblings were much older. They had moved out the house by the time I was growing up. So it was kind of me and Nick left. He's 9 years older than me. He was my big inspiration, the big brother. You know, you have lots of love for your big brother. You want to be like your big brother. Around the age 8, 9 years old, Nick is big into skateboarding. And I saw it as a youngster. I was like, this is so cool. My brother's doing it. I need to do it. I need to get a skateboard. So my parents bought me like a little skateboard at the age of 8. And I fell in love in a huge way with skateboarding, the culture itself, the extremeness of it, the fun of it. I mean, skateboarded from the age of like 8 up until roughly 18, 19. It's all I did, all I could think about was skateboarding. Friday to Sunday, skateboarding. How that ties into the story is that when I was about 13 or 14, we can say, we got our first flip phone. My parents hooked me up with one of those flip phones with a small shotty camera on it. But they were the in thing back then at that age. I make myself sound so old, but I'm really not. But that's what we had. And obviously that moved into our hobby of skateboarding, because now we were taking pictures, videos of each other, sharing them with each other, and it was a big, it's a big thing in the skateboarding culture. Whoever gets stuck with the camera on the day has to film everybody and can't skate himself. So it's a funny dynamic in the skateboarding world. So we're obviously taking these pictures of each other, filming each other, causing nonsense on the streets, and I really enjoyed it. And I always had a very artistic arm on the side of drawing. So I always was into creativity. I was always into creating. From a very young age drawing. So my parents saw me taking these pictures. They said, you obviously enjoy that. I said I really did. I would love to like try out a camera. So for I can't tell you if it was my 13th or my 14th birthday, they bought me a little Canon 700D. Like a 8,000 Rand, very beginner camera. And I loved it. Immediately jumped into the streets, into the skate park. Photographing my friends, recording my friends, just kind of getting that skateboarding culture now, but on an actual camera. And I very, 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 very quickly fell in love with what it felt like to have a camera, what it felt like to take the pictures, what it felt like to create something that you're proud of. That was the initial fuel for me. And it wasn't so video orientated. I was always into still images. And I said from that day, I was like, when I'm older, I'm going to be a professional photographer. You know, there's kind of like this, I don't know what you would call it, this aura to a photographer that everybody kind of feels like he's the cool guy. This is all I wanted to be growing up, was the cool photographer taking pictures. So I pursued that. And I shot pictures from the age of 14 every weekend. My skateboarding slowed down and photography started to take over. I mustn't draw the picture that I wasn't skateboarding. It was very much intertwined, but photography really started to take the full picture on that. Is the reason I carried on skating, was to take these pictures. Fast forward a couple of years, I remember it very vividly. My father was driving me to Fourways, and we were taking like that long Buccleuch turn as you go past the Buccleuch off ramp on the way to Fourways. And I remember so vividly. I don't know what we were doing. I remember I was about 16 years old. It was on about a Saturday, and he said to me in a very stern and charming way. That's the best way to wrap up my father. Is he's just absolutely intelligent, so charming and so smooth and stern. And he said to me in a very straight way, you're not gonna like this, but one day you'll thank me for it, but I'm gonna make you get a job now. And I'm 16, and the first thing that went through my head was, fuck this. I just want to skateboard and take pictures on the weekend. What do you mean I must get a job now? I must go work. Why must I work? Why can't you pay for things? The average thing a 16-year-old would go through. He said, you're going to have to now get a job. These are the rules. And I said, okay. At the time, my oldest brother, Raf, who is 16 years older than me, had an agency called Decimal Agency. And I remember in like quick conversation, he said, if you ever want to carry on taking pictures, come chat to the agency, come intern here, see if they've got anything that they can throw you. So I said that to my dad, and he said, done deal, I'll set it up. And he set me up with Raf for what is kind of my first interning, first kind of job in the actual world. He had a cool office in Bruma, and they had like a plethora of clients from Krispy Kreme to Stokey Nickel, blah, 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 blah. So I chatted to my brother. He said, dead keen, come intern here, I'll introduce you to the team, and I'll even pay you a stipend. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, at the time it was about 2,000 Rand a month, which was a shitload of money for a 16-year-old. I mean, 2,000 Rand a month, I was loving life. And I would go during the day from school. I would have school in the day, and then I would end up going to intern at his office in the afternoon. Because I've got kind of these older brothers who are both in the creative spaces and they're both successful entrepreneurs, it kind of paved the way for me, which is why when my parents first saw me enjoying taking pictures, they jumped on it immediately with the support and said, here's like a little baby camera. When I said I want to go intern in like this creative space, they said absolutely. So I must not only thank my brothers for kind of paving that way, but thank my parents for just giving the best support that they could have ever given to me at such a young age. So what they had done is I was in very Lani private schools, the schools that you have to take very seriously. Obviously my life was now filling up in the afternoons, taking these pictures at Decimal Agency and having school in the morning. So they said, look, you're clearly not the best students. I had an average of like 50. You've got no interest in this type of thing and you want to pursue this. So we're going to put you in kind of a, bless their soul, they said it was a small school, a small private school with like 10 kids per class, but I ended up in remedial schools, just with individuals who had big learning disabilities, which I would say I had a learning disability as well, but I was more of an interest in other things versus school. So they put me into the small school where I had very tight-knit relationships with my teachers because it's like a grade full of 5 individuals. So I had said to them from the beginning, because I'm always quite a straight individual, I had said, look, I won't make your life hard. I will always respect you, but this is my situation. I'm coming to school in the morning, I'm going to the office in the afternoon. I will always respect you, but I ain't doing your homework and I ain't doing your assignments. There's no time for me in the day. I'm only getting home at 6 o'clock. Some of them understood it, some of them didn't. To hell with the ones who didn't. And that was kind of how I went through school, being able to have this internship as well as manage the school itself. But the support from the teachers was very important. And I was at Decimal for, I want to say, a year and a half. So let's call it like halfway through my 17s. I had stopped interning there. I can't tell you why. I think maybe I grew out of it or anything like that. I stopped interning there, long story short, and did some like freelance work. I can't glorify the freelance work. I always say that I started working professionally at 16 because of Decimal and then continued shooting. But it was like small matric dances, small portrait shoots, small things like that. I was lucky to be getting paid for all of those gigs. I did that from 17 to 18 years old. I matriculated. And it was a big question, are you going to study now? Are you going to keep shooting? What are you going to do? I had no interest in studying whatsoever, so I jumped straight into, okay, I'm going to keep shooting. I'm going to try this out, see what I can do with it. To put a little bit of money in my pocket, I was lucky to earn 10,000 Rand, 15,000 Rand doing what I was doing. I must also rewind. Another thing that made me incredibly lucky is in that moment in the car with my dad when I was 16 years old, he said, I'm going to make you get a job. And I'm going to do one better, something I did with your brothers as well. Everything you save from your job, by the time you're 18, I will match that so you have some type of capital investment into buying whatever you want to do, whether it's buying a house or anything like that. So I think I had saved like 30,000 Rand over that year and a half, or 2 years up until I was 18, which he of course kept his word and he matched it. And I bought my first professional camera, which is the Canon 5D Mark IV, just this bulky, big 40 or 35 megapixel stills camera. Obviously trying to now take on the world as a professional. So I did these small gigs, trying not to leave out any details, up until I was about 20 years old. During this time, when I was 17, rewinding a bit, I had set 2 goals for myself. Coming from a skateboarding background, the big thing in skateboarding is getting a sponsorship. That's how you know you're a professional skateboarder. That's how you know you're in the big times now. They're giving you free shoes, free skateboards, etc., etc. So that was something I always wanted to push in my career as a photographer, was I wanted to get sponsored. So I had a goal of a Canon sponsorship, which was a big boy goal down the line. And my more achievable close goal was to get endorsed by Godox Lighting. I absolutely love Godox Lighting. The first light I ever bought was Godox Lighting. So that was my first push. And I remember I'd emailed them when I was probably 17 years old, and they didn't laugh at me, but they were like, look, you're young, you still have so much to learn. So we'll monitor and watch you, and then hopefully one day it can happen. And my other big goal was to get publications in magazines, because I was shooting lots of artistic artworks, obviously on the commercial side, shooting matric dances, so on and so forth, but the actual work I was shooting for myself was very artistic, lots of Photoshop composites, lots of dark things, etc., etc. So those are my 2 goals I set at 17. I had matriculated when I was 18, and I remember I was in Durban for that holiday just after you've matriculated, and on the 4th day of 2019, the month after I had matriculated, the Gallery of Redefined Art in North America sent me an email. And they said, we've seen your work, we've seen that you've tagged us, we love it, we want to publish your work this side of the world, is that alright? And it was like this big moment for me, not only because my goal that I had set for further down my career kind of had landed on my doorstep, super early on, but I was also amazed that it was this international publication. It was this gallery in North America. So that was very cool for me. And then funnily enough, 2 months later, they had published me again. Like a month after that, an LA-based magazine had written an article about me as a young creative. And it's so funny because all of my career publications, all the publications I've ever had, all fit in that year of 2019. Nothing's ever come after that. So it's kind of what you put into the universe comes back. And COVID happens. Now, as COVID happens, my father does research. He's obviously an older gentleman, and he says, for more context, my mother is living in Durban at the time, not because they're separated, because she had a look at a business venture that side. So she was staying in KZN. I don't know if it's 20 or 2021, whenever COVID started. He said, this is attacking old people. I'm old, so I'm going to stay with your mom in Durban. And your brother Nick is going to move into the house here, so that you guys can be together during the pandemic. Which was like such a funny time when I think back to it, but also so awesome to have my older brother back in the house and no parental supervision. He's the naughty one out of all of us, so we had a lot of fun. With that came his girlfriend had moved in with us, his girlfriend at the time, and his business partner and good friend Stallion, who's a DJ, he had moved in with us as well. And we were all four of us staying together in my parents' old home. They're all deep in the events world, both of them being musicians, owning an events company. It's now a very weird time. There's no revenue happening for freelance photographers or musicians. So we started to kind of hustle in interesting ways. And one of the ways was, Nick had learned all the broadcast side of streaming. And I obviously knew all the camera side of production. So we put those two skills together and we were broadcasting out DJ sets. Where they would pay a small fee, and then as the lockdown, as people could start to drive, they would drive to our house. They had set up staging lights, CDJs, and would stream out these DJs. And additionally, we were streaming funerals, which was unbelievable, man. I remember we were doing maybe 3 funerals a week. Try attend 2 funerals a month and see how hard it is. The 3 funerals a week is unbelievable. There was one we did, can't remember the gent's name, can't remember anything else, but I remember standing behind the camera and he had a heart attack at 25 years old and we had to go stream his funeral. And I remember standing behind the camera just after his girlfriend's eulogy, tears streaming down my face. So it was a very dark side of production. But that was kind of my first introduction into the video world. And then to build on that, my shooting style had completely taken a pivot because now I'm in this very different industry, being the event side. I've got like lots of event influencers around me, lots of musicians. I'm now hanging out with DJs. So I pivoted very quickly into shooting lots of events, stills of and photos of events. And a big thing for me was DJ press kits. I had like a small infinity backdrop in my parents' house, which I would utilize, and they would come and we would shoot all these creative images, and it was just such like a fun time and a cool lifestyle upgrade for me, because when you're rubbing shoulders with all the DJs and you're also the photographer at the events, you're kind of being looked after in like a very cool way. I mean, the girls give all the camera guy their attention, so that was epic to do. I was single at the time. I'm also getting like backstage access. I'm getting invited to all these big parties on the guest list. So it was like a cool, very cool lifestyle upgrade. I must preface, my girlfriend these chicks are nothing compared to my girlfriend. It was just a cool time in my life. A very fun time in my life. Shooting more events, shooting more DJs. What do DJs need? What do events need is video content. So I had a lot of people ask me for video content. So I always said, look, I'm the photographer. I'm not too interested in video, but I started to pick up the skill, started to learn it, and very quickly started to fall in love with it. And the best way for me to define the love I had for it was, what I loved about photography wasn't just taking the picture. I really loved taking the picture, and I loved socializing with individuals and creating the image in the camera. But what really drew me was the creative side of post-production, which is, I spent a lot of time learning Photoshop from like the age of probably 15, when I got that, just after I had gotten that first baby camera, I jumped into Photoshop and I started to learn how to cut stuff out, blend it, color stuff, blah, 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 blah. So that was the true love for me, was if I was spending 10 minutes on an image, it was like way too short. So I wanted to spend more time editing an image, which is actually what paved the way for me for those international publications, was that they were very creative images. They weren't just standard click, color enhanced images. They had lots of compositional elements in them. What drew me into video very quickly was that photography started to become boring because I had done all the editing. What I loved about video was that I can spend hours on a timeline, hours in Premiere Pro, adding speed ramps, color grading, sound effects, score, narratives. I mean, It's funny because the bane of my existence today is post-production. It's the one thing that stopped me from doing business development, is having to edit. But back then it was the absolute fuel for me, was the time spent in post-production. Shooting all these events, probably 2021, 2022, I could really be ruining the dates. I fly to Durban to visit my parents. I remember I had such a cuck flight. I mean, I'm so scared of landing. I don't know why. The whole flight is smooth, but as soon as we land, I'm pooping myself in the back of the plane. But landing is much better than crashing, so I should be happy to be landing. I remember I'd landed, my father picked me up from the airport. Their home was past Ballito, so it's about a 45-minute drive. We stop off in Ballito to get resources, stop at the spa. I'm walking through the spa with my father. Bing, my phone picks up and I get an email. Open up the email, it says, "Hi Gabriel, this is Tara from Godox South Africa. We've had a look at your portfolio, love what you're doing, see the love you have for the brand. We want to put you on the team." Now this was I remember I made like 20 phone calls as soon as this email came in, phoning people going, "Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Can you believe it?" So that was kind of the beginning of my relationship with Godox, being my first sponsorship, and kind of the second goal ticked off of my very short goal list. At about 2021, again, I thought it was very premature in my life, but I was very lucky to have it. Fast forward, I'm shooting these events. I'm slowly getting better and better and better at video. I'm buying more equipment. I went from that professional camera I bought at 18 years old. I very quickly bought a cinema camera, saved up money, bought a cinema camera. And what I had found was that my skills were getting better. I'm now endorsed. I'm a Godox ambassador, the youngest Godox ambassador in Africa, I must say, to this day. And my equipment is upgrading dramatically. But the DJ budgets were never. The events budgets were never. I mean, what COVID did to the events world, that's really never bounced back from it, unfortunately. So as I was progressing, the budgets were very stagnated. And I was becoming more of an adult. I needed to bring more revenue in. I think at the time of shooting the DJs as well, if I got 15 grand from a lot of work in the month, I would be lucky. Because I think I was shooting DJ press kits for $1,000 and the Oaks were walking away with like 40 retouched images. It was a very social and fun thing for me. It wasn't so much chasing money, but eventually you say, okay, I need to now start making actual money. 2022, 2023, I'm still shooting the DJs, kind of now slowly going into the corporate world. Happening parallel to the time, Raf and Lara, to give context to the viewers, Raf is my oldest brother, 16 years, and Lara is his absolutely fantastic wife. They open up what today is Sherbet during COVID. Also super risky move. I mean, who opens up a new agency during a time when nobody can work? And if anybody can do it during COVID, it's the two of them. I mean, they're absolute machines. So as Sherbet was progressing, they're starting to land clients, and we're starting to see this massive incline on the need for video on social media, which wasn't a massive thing before. But if you look at the statistics today, I mean, a video does 10, 20, 30 times better than what a still image does. So it's becoming this huge need for short form content, and their clients were starting to show that. So we hadn't worked so much together throughout the time prior to Sherbet. They had a couple of clients, needed a couple of videos, so Lara had reached out to me, said, "Hey, our officers are here, we need to chat about how we can kind of produce videos." So we're talking about super young, low-end videos in the beginning of like my video career. And it's so funny, the ladies like Danitza and Danny were working for Sherbet at that time. So I mean, when I say we go way back with Danny and Danitza, but like since 2022 we've been working on projects together. And we're talking about 1,000 Rand a video, 1.5 a video, then it became 2 grand a video, then it was like 3 grand a video. Then if I was charging 5,000 Rand for a video, I was chuffed with myself, super happy. Time progresses. We keep shooting videos. I'm still shooting DJs and events while I'm shooting these things with Sherbet. And Raf phones me one day and says, "Look, we've got a lead with Discam and we need a video to be shot. There needs to be a very quick turnaround time. Are you keen to do it?" So I was like, hell yeah. And it was a Springboks orientated video. It was happening during the World Cup. And Discam was showing their support for the Springboks. And I remember we had shot at like 8 o'clock in the morning and then wanted to post at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So when I say tight deadline, super tight deadline, I started to proxy my footage and build a narrative. But we managed to do it. And it was kind of Discam throwing our group a bone, saying, "We're going to test you, we're going to see what you can do." And we managed to impress them with this video and make a really quick turnaround time on it. And it was one of the beginning parts of, I don't think the overall Disc Game relationship, but definitely my relationship with Disc Game started there. And they started hiring us more. As we know today, Disc Game requires an unbelievable amount of content streaming through onto their socials. So kind of our budgets went from 3 grand to 8 grand, to 10 grand to 15 grand, and they were slowly but slowly growing. And I remember there was a month where Sherbet had paid me 30,000 rand. And I would be messing up the years, maybe 2023, 2024. And that's when it clicked for me, because I was still kind of sailing through the industry going, well, I hope I can do this full time for the rest of my life and make a career out of it. And they had paid me 30 grand. And that's when I clicked, saying, okay, I need to keep pushing because I've figured out something here. And then another month came where they had paid me 40 grand, and then a month where they paid 10, and then a month where it was 40 grand again, and then 60, and then 80, then 100, then 120, then 150. Now I'm like 24 years old, and in 1 month I've turned over 150,000 rand. I mean, this is unbelievable stuff for somebody my age. And Raf sat down with me, being the older brother that he is, and he says, I've seen that Sherbet just offloaded 150 grand into your accounts. We cannot continue to pay you 100,000 rand plus into your personal account. It's not how you do business, and one day you'll be unlucky because the tax man will knock on your door and come claim 45% of everything you've made. And we had a long discussion of kind of the tax implications of working as a freelancer versus working as a business. And having a business as a vehicle to store money in is a huge thing that individuals need to do when they get to a certain tax bracket. Because if you earn 1 million rand as a freelancer, the tax man's going to take 450 grand of it. If you earn 1 million rand as a business, the most they're going to take is 280,000 rand of it. So it was the smarter move. He said, additionally, I think you're super skilled. Clearly, we've got like a great working relationship happening here. Give me shares. Let's open up a production company under your name. Give me shares, and I'm going to help the scalability of the company. And at the time, I was somewhat hesitant, because I was greedy. I said, I'm gonna shoot something and now somebody else must make money from it. So I never really understood the give and take of giving shares to another individual. And then additionally, I was living a very cool lifestyle, being a freelancer, waking up at any time on Monday, doing what I want during the day, then working when I want, and still being able to make money. And I knew kind of formalizing this business was going to mean I was going to have to work in an office. It's an 8 to 5, blah, blah, blah. And it was ultimately one of the best decisions I'd ever made. And Raf said something to me that he says all the time that rings so true, but out of sight, out of mind. You need to be in the room in order to catch a deal. You can't just be hiding in the shadows and expect work to land on your plate. And he was absolutely so right. So I said, okay, we made the shift into registering Cine One, giving shares to Sherbet, making us the partner company, and kind of taking on all the production side of things. And it's been growing since then steadily. We registered Cine One in 2024. It was me in the beginning, hence the name. Cine being cinematography, One being I was the only one who did it. Obviously that's very different today. And for a good year and a half, it was just me carrying all these lights, all these cameras by myself. And then eventually I grabbed Kuda, who is a good friend of mine's cousin who has interest in the industry. And I said, come work as my production assistant. And we worked together alongside, and he was like a tremendous amount of help. And essentially the relationship between Sherbet and Cine One has been blossoming since then, and we've kind of been scaling and growing next to one another, taking on different size clients, doing a bunch of different things, and then eventually hiring additional hands on the team to make it happen. So I will say something that people don't like hearing, but is the God honest truth. There's a difference between a cinematographer and a videographer. A videographer is very much like content creation orientated. Whereas a cinematographer is somebody, it's kind of in the name, shooting on cinema cameras, cinema lenses. It's more setup, bigger crews. It's more on the high-end narrative side of things. So that would be the difference between a videographer and cinematographer. The difference between a photographer and a cinematographer, or a videographer, let me rather say the difference between photo and video is a huge leap. There's a lot more gear required for videography. For video, let me rather say. A lot more expensive gear, I must say. I mean, you can get a professional photo camera for 40,000 rand, where high-end video cameras are starting at 80 going up. Then there's additionals of audio. It's so easy to be a photographer. If you ask Tabiso, our photographer over here, he just puts one flash on his camera and he runs around shooting things, and the pictures look amazing. When we need all of these things, we don't have the luckiness of just having one small light on there. And then additionally, the storage is much bigger. now we're storing, photographer stores one picture, we're storing up to 120 frames per second. So 120 pictures per second of our footage. The big thing that hooked me besides the post-production was that you can charge vastly more for video. A, because video is performing better on social media, but B, because it requires much more equipment, much more time, and a much higher level of expertise. I say that subjectively. I mean, you've got some photographers out there like Andy Leibovitz who will charge 3-4 million euros for a couple of pictures. But in the same breath, there's DOPs out there who are charging just as much for short amounts of video. So yeah, that's the difference. I'd say it's very good to start with photography, because photography gives you a basic understanding of how a camera works, as well as exposure and lighting. It is, and I will say it confidently, easier to take a good picture than it is to take a good video. There's a lot more moving parts to just the camera technicalities when it comes to video. So I think I got a bit of a head start because I was working as a professional photographer at the time. So I really understood a camera back to front, and those threw me forward very far, understanding, not trying to figure it out as it's happening, because I had that understanding already. So I'd say it's good to start with photo. If you're not interested, you don't need to start with photo. You can jump straight into video. You're just going to study a little bit more on the Free University of YouTube, which is what I recommend. Everything I've learned is from the Free University of YouTube. If I were to say in today's time, in 2026, I would push an individual to learn AI. I would say you don't need to buy a big camera anymore. You don't need to spend so much time learning about the technical side. And I would spend a lot of time learning AI and how I can utilize AI as a tool to help me with the video side of things. Would be a very good place to start. But it's hard work, man. I say I get lucky, and there were lots of super lucky moments in my life. I'm lucky to have an entrepreneurial father. I'm lucky to have parents who support me. I'm lucky to have a creative mother who I got creativity from. I'm lucky that the brand saw me at a young age. I'm lucky that the international magazine saw me at a young age. I'm lucky that my eldest brother was an agency owner, so we were able to open up businesses together. But a lot of hard work came into it, particularly when I think of my time shooting the events and the DJs. It was late nights, early mornings, and I was pushing, because there was no support. And it was just me taking all the lights, me doing all the editing, me doing all the planning. So I don't know, I've sidetracked, but hard work is an important one, no doubt. So I'd say what makes a good video is the lighting. There's another Godox ambassador called Carl Daniels, who is the epitome of your camera doesn't matter, your lighting matters. Also endorsed by Godox, but he shoots on very old Canon 6D cameras. If you look at his images, they are unbelievable, and it all comes down to the lighting. You can shoot, you see it even on a cell phone. The moment somebody starts adding its external lighting, you can really go, whoa, this was a beautiful cell phone clip. So I would say that's the main thing. What makes a great video, two sections of video: film being TV, story, narrative, long form, and commercial being short form, social media type of stuff, which is obviously what we cater for at Cine One. What makes a great video on the commercial side will be lighting, and if the video is good enough to sell a product. If we can get a message across to a viewer in 10 to 15 seconds. If it's scroll stopping to get somebody to stop scrolling to the next video. Those make great commercial videos. On the film side of things, it's so much, man. The narrative, the camera work, the lighting, the audio, the directing, the wardrobe. There's so much that goes into film that I can't even define what makes a great film. What makes a great film is probably a story that can move an individual in one way or the other.